The moon was quiet when the small survey ship dropped from the black sky. Its silver hull cut across the clouds and settled near a stretch of pale trees that glowed faintly under the twin suns. Mark, a human pilot with a tired face and steady hands, stepped out from the ship and looked around with sharp eyes. He had traveled through many systems, but this place felt different. The air was heavy with scent like metal and earth mixed together. The trees bent as if whispering secrets to one another. Mark was alone on this mission. He had been sent to map new trade paths and look for resources that might be useful for future colonies. He expected to find only rocks, soil, and maybe some signs of minerals. Instead, he saw shapes between the trees. The shapes moved, tall and graceful, carrying tools and weapons made from metal that shone in the light. He froze. He had discovered a living settlement. As he walked slowly forward, the shapes came into view. They were people, but not human. Their skin carried a faint blue tone, and their eyes gleamed bright like stars at night. The tallest of them stood in front, holding a blade that curved like the wing of a bird. She was strong, proud, and silent, but her silence did not last. "Stay away from me or you will get hurt," the woman said. Her voice was clear and sharp. She spoke his language with a strange rhythm, but every word carried weight. Mark raised his hands, showing he had no weapon. "I do not want to fight. I only came to look. I am a traveler. My ship landed here by chance." The woman narrowed her eyes. She did not step back. Instead, she took one step closer, blade still raised. The others behind her shifted, waiting for her signal. It was clear she was their leader, or at least their shield. "You are human," she said. "Your kind brings fire and chains. We know the stories. If you stay here, danger will come to us. Leave now." Mark felt the warning in her words, yet he also saw the faint flicker of worry in her eyes. It was not simple hate. It was fear mixed with pain, old and deep. He looked at her carefully, trying to find a way to show his truth. "My name is Mark," he said. "I will leave if I must, but I can help first. Your camp has broken machines. I hear the hum of a failing core. If it stops, your people will lose light and heat." The woman's jaw tightened. For a moment, Mark thought she would strike him down. Instead, she lowered the blade a little, just enough to show she was listening. "You speak as if you know us," she said. "But you are only guessing." Mark shook his head. "I am an engineer. I know the sound of a weak generator. Let me look. I promise no harm. If I cannot help, I will walk away," the others whispered among themselves. Some wanted to chase him out. Others looked uncertain. Finally, the woman gave a short nod. She did not trust him, but she would test him. She turned and led him through the trees into the heart of their camp. The camp was simple, but full of signs of long struggle. Wooden frames supported metal panels that must have come from old ships. Small fires burned in stone circles. Children with bright eyes peeked out from behind walls, watching the stranger. Older men and women moved with caution, but also with hope. At the center stood the machine Mark had mentioned. It was tall, round, and glowing weakly with blue light. Every few seconds it sputtered and hissed. It would not last long, the woman pointed to it. "You see, this is our light. Without it, we are blind in the dark. Can you fix it, human?" Mark stepped closer. He studied the wires and the cracked shell. "Yes," he said after a moment. "I think I can." She crossed her arms. "Do it then! But remember my warning. Stay away from me or you will get hurt." Mark gave a small smile. "I will take the risk." Hours passed as Mark worked on the generator. He pulled tools from his small pack, simple ones he always carried. He cleaned the cracked coils, replaced a broken joint with a piece of metal from his kit, and rewired the power lines. Sweat ran down his face, but he kept moving with patience and focus. The people watched him, whispering as sparks flew. Some were ready to stop him if he failed. Others prayed silently that he would succeed. The woman stayed close, blade still at her side. She did not speak much, but her eyes never left him. At times she asked short questions about what he was doing, and Mark answered with simple words. Slowly, the suspicion in her gaze turned into something else. Not trust, not yet, but maybe a small crack in the wall she had built around herself. Finally, the generator gave a strong hum. The blue light grew brighter, filling the camp with warmth. The people gasped. Children clapped their hands. Elders bowed their heads in thanks. Mark stepped back, tired but pleased. "There," he said. "It should last much longer now." The woman looked at the machine, then at him. For the first time, she lowered her blade fully. She gave a short nod. "You did not lie. You have skill, but skill does not make you safe. Mark wiped his brow. I know, but I mean no harm. She studied him again as if weighing his words. At last she said, My name is Nara, remember it. If you betray us, it will be the last name you hear. Mark did not flinch. He simply nodded. Then I will remember. Night came over the moon and the camp gathered around fires. Mark sat at the edge, still an outsider but no longer a threat. The people shared food made from roots and wild fruit. He ate quietly, listening to their songs. Nara sat across the fire, her blade resting beside her, her eyes watching him. She did not smile, but she did not look away either. An older woman spoke to Nara. Perhaps the human is not like the others. Perhaps he is different. Nara's answer was sharp. All humans are the same. They promise safety, then bring storms. We will not be fooled again. But even as she said it, her gaze shifted back to Mark, who was repairing a small broken lamp for one of the children. Her words were hard, yet something in her face had softened. Later, as the fire burned low, Nara walked past Mark and stopped beside him. She looked at the stars above and spoke in a low voice. You should not have stayed. It is dangerous for you here, more dangerous than you know. Mark looked at her. Then why did you not force me to leave? She was silent for a moment, then said, Because my people needed the light, and because you did not run when I warned you. Few have done that. Mark smiled faintly. I will not run. I came to understand, not to take. Nara turned to him, her eyes sharp again. Be careful, human. Curiosity can kill. If you stay, you will be drawn into our fight. And our fight is not yours. Mark held her gaze. Maybe it should be. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked and the stars shone above. At last, Nara walked away into the shadows. Mark stayed by the fire, knowing his choice to remain had already set a new path in motion. The morning sun rose over the pale forest, spilling light through the tall, blue-tinted trees. Mark woke to the sound of birds he had never seen before, their songs high and delicate. The camp was quiet now. The fires were small, smoke curling lazily toward the sky. He stood and stretched, feeling the ache in his arms from repairing the generator the night before. Even with the success of his work, he knew Nara's warning still hung over him. She had made it clear, outsiders could bring disaster. Mark stepped lightly toward the heart of the camp. The people were already stirring. Children ran between the trees, laughing softly, while elders inspected their homes and tools. Mark noticed Nara standing on a raised platform of roots, her eyes scanning the camp. She was quiet, sharp, and unyielding. When she saw him approaching, she lifted a single hand. He froze. You should not be walking freely, she said, her voice low. A single misstep could cost you your life. Or mine. I understand, Mark said calmly. But I want to learn. If I move carefully, I can help. She studied him. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, though her eyes remained wary. Finally, she spoke again. There is one older woman. She may let you stay for a while. Do not anger her. Her decision is final. Mark nodded and followed her through narrow paths formed between the trees. The older woman waited by a shallow stream. Her skin was pale with age and her eyes held a glimmer of wisdom. She studied Mark with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Human, she said. You repaired the light. That was skill. But skill does not mean trust. Why are you here? Mark bowed slightly. I came because my work brought me near. I could leave. But I wish to help. My knowledge may save lives if you allow me. The woman was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. You may stay. Until dusk. Not longer. One night does not make you part of this world. You are here to observe and help only. Thank you, Mark said. I will not overstep. Nara remained nearby, watching him like a hawk. Mark could feel her eyes on him as he moved through the camp, checking small machines and tools. The settlement had survived for years on careful maintenance and hidden knowledge. Mark noticed signs of wear and old damage from past attacks, burned walls, dented panels, and broken bridges. Every repair Mark offered was a small act of life returning to this place. As he worked, a sudden noise startled him. A creature leapt from the shadows, its long legs bending strangely, its eyes glowing faintly in the sunlight. It moved toward a group of children playing near the edge of the camp. Without thinking, Mark ran forward. He grabbed a fallen branch and waved it, shouting to distract the creature. The children screamed and ran to safety. The hunters of the camp arrived, their weapons ready. With Mark's help, they drove the creature back into the forest. The camp was quiet once more. Nara approached him. her face sharp and unreadable. "You disobeyed my warning. You interfered with our world." "Why?" Mark looked at her steadily. "I could not stand by while they were in danger. I do not know all your rules, but I know when someone must act." Nara's jaw tightened. She said nothing, but the corners of her lips twitched slightly. She did not trust him yet, but something in her expression betrayed a hint of grudging respect. The day passed with Mark moving carefully through the camp, helping where he could. He repaired small tools, cleaned filters, and organized materials for the upcoming water harvest. Nara followed, sometimes speaking in short commands, sometimes just watching. Around the fire in the evening, Mark tried to speak with the children. He taught them a simple game from his world, a way to throw and catch small stones. They laughed, the sound echoing between the trees, and even Nara's lips twitched, though she quickly returned to her usual serious expression. As the sun began to set, Mark discovered something unusual. Beneath the roots of the central settlement, he found a small hidden device. It hummed faintly and projected a series of dots and lines he recognized as a signal pattern. He crouched and examined it carefully, tracing wires and following the trail. Nara noticed him immediately. She strode toward him, her blade glinting in the fading light. "What is that?" she demanded. Mark looked up. "I think it is a signal device. It may explain why your settlements have been troubled by falling rocks. Someone may be guiding them." Her eyes narrowed. "You do not know what you speak of. Leave it alone." "I cannot," Mark said. "If this is what I think, it is dangerous. It could destroy your camp. You deserve to know." For a long moment, Nara said nothing. Then she sheathed her blade and stepped back. "Very well, but you act at your own risk. One mistake and you will die." Together they traced the device. Mark worked quickly, carefully, explaining in simple words what he saw. The device had old calculations, charts that directed small rock formations toward the settlement. Mark realized that these were not random events. Someone had placed the device deliberately, and it had been operating for decades. Nara's face went pale. She whispered to herself, "I believe the rocks were accidents. I never imagined. Someone wanted us dead." Mark placed a reassuring hand on the device. "We can stop it. We must be careful, but it can be done." Nara studied him with a complex mix of emotions, fear, anger, and an unfamiliar feeling, hope. She did not speak, but her eyes followed every move. Night fell again, colder than before. The stars above shone brighter than anywhere Mark had ever been. The camp settled near the fire, preparing for sleep. The children curled close to their parents, while the elders discussed quietly what they had learned. Nara remained near Mark, not speaking, only watching the faint hum of the repaired device. "You are brave," she finally said, "and foolish. I do not know why you risk your life for us." Mark smiled faintly. "Because it is the right thing to do. I have made mistakes in my world, but here I can help." "That is enough." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she turned to the elders and whispered. They spoke quietly, and then one of them approached Mark. "You have done more than repair a light," the elder said. "You have saved lives today. Yet your presence here is fragile. Trust is not yours yet. Only action can earn it." Mark nodded. "I understand. I will act only to protect and help. Nothing more." Nara's gaze softened just slightly. She knew he spoke truth, yet she could not fully trust. She had been betrayed before by humans and other beings. But this human, something about him was different. He did not just speak, he acted. And action, she thought, was the measure of all things. The rest of the night passed quietly. Mark sat near the fire, repairing a small lamp for one of the children. They watched him with wide, curious eyes. Occasionally, Nara would glance over, her expression unreadable. She had not given permission for him to be near the children, yet she allowed it. The small act of trust was meaningful, though she did not say it aloud. As dawn approached, Mark felt the weight of his decision. He had chosen to take a risk. He had stayed despite warnings, and now he was beginning to see that the smallest actions could shift the balance of fear and hope. Nara had warned him, "Stay away or be hurt," yet he had chosen the opposite, and that choice, he realized, would change not only his fate, but the fate of everyone in this settlement. Nara finally approached him before the first rays of sunlight touched the camp. "You have earned a small mercy," she said. "Tonight you may remain. After that, we will decide what comes next. Do not test me further." Mark smiled and nodded. "Thank you. I will honor that mercy." She looked at him one last time and then turned away, walking toward the edge of the camp. Her presence was still strong, still guarded, but it no longer carried only warning. There was an acknowledgement, silent but real, that he had done something worth recognizing. The first sunlight spilled across the settlement, painting the pale trees with gold. Mark stood and looked at Nara from a distance. She was watching the forest beyond, alert to unseen threats, and yet, he thought, she had allowed him a place in her world even if only for a day. That small space of trust was enough to begin something new. For the human who had chosen to take the risk, the day had just begun. And the adventure, he knew, would demand more courage, more wisdom, and more heart than he had ever imagined. The day after the first night passed quietly at first. The camp stirred under the gentle light of the twin suns. Children ran along the paths between the pale trees, and elders checked their tools and machines. Mark walked carefully, observing the subtle movements of the settlement. He had been welcomed in a small way, yet he knew the trust he had earned was fragile. One wrong action could erase all progress. Nara stayed close, her eyes sharp and scanning the surroundings. She moved like a shadow, her presence both protective and threatening. Even though she had allowed him to remain, she reminded him constantly with her gaze. One mistake and he would pay dearly. Mark felt the weight of her scrutiny, but he also noticed something else. The alien people, while cautious, began to show small signs of hope. They moved faster, smiled more, and spoke to each other with lighter voices. He realized that his presence had already changed the mood. For the first time in years, they felt someone outside of their world cared enough to take a risk for them. He returned to the small hidden device he had found the night before. It was tucked beneath the roots of a massive tree near the center of the camp. The faint hum still echoed, a soft vibration against the earth. He knelt and studied the wires, charts, and patterns carved into its metal surface. The more he looked, the more he understood. The falling rocks that had plagued the settlement for decades were not random. Someone had carefully guided them toward this place. Nara approached quietly, her eyes fixed on him. "You should not touch that," she said. "You do not understand what it is. It is older than your people. It may be dangerous." Mark shook his head. "I am careful, and I have studied enough to know what it does. This device controls the course of the rocks. They are being guided, not falling by chance." Nara's lips pressed tightly together. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "I told myself it was random. We believed it was nature. But you are saying it is deliberate?" "Yes," Mark said. "And if we do nothing, more will come. The device will continue to send them until the settlement is destroyed." Her eyes widened. She turned away and walked a short distance, struggling to keep her anger and fear contained. "Someone wants us dead," she muttered. "Someone has planned this for years. And we were blind." Mark reached out to her. "We can stop it. We need a plan. And we need your guidance." She looked back at him, her expression conflicted. Finally, she said, "I will guide you. But if you make one mistake, it will cost lives. You are human, and humans are reckless." "Do not prove me right," Mark nodded. "I will not be reckless. I promise." Together they examined the device more closely. Mark's hands moved carefully over the panels, tracing wires and reading the carved charts. He discovered that the device had a control node, a small console that allowed someone to adjust the trajectory of the rocks. The calculations were complex but understandable. He realized that the object had been left behind during a war long ago, forgotten by the enemy who had set it up, yet still functioning with deadly precision. Nara stood nearby, watching him work. Her eyes scanned the forest constantly, alert for any danger. "If anyone knew we were tampering with this," she said, "they would come for us immediately. This is not just about rocks. Someone placed this to control the settlement, to threaten us, to test us. If we fail, they will return." Mark absorbed her words. "Then we must act carefully. We can't just shut it down. We need to understand it fully first. Then we can stop the threat and protect everyone." The day moved slowly as they worked side by side. Mark taught Nara a few simple principles from human engineering. He explained the need for testing, observation, and careful calculation. Nara listened, skeptical at first, but gradually began to see that his methods were different from the reckless behavior she had feared. He planned every step and prepared for potential failures. As they worked, they found a map hidden beneath the device. It marked the positions of falling rocks, their sizes, and projected trajectories. Some of the rocks were small, harmless in appearance, but others were massive, capable of destroying the entire settlement if they hit directly. Mark traced the paths on the map, showing Nara the patterns. "They are guided to specific points in the camp," he said. Someone is using this device to try to eliminate your people. But we can reverse the paths or slow the rocks so they miss. Nara's eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and determination. She finally nodded. Then we do not have time to waste. The rocks will not wait for us to prepare. We must act. The next hours were a test of patience and courage. Mark and Nara gathered a small team of hunters and engineers from the settlement. Each was wary of the human, but the evidence of the device and Mark's skill convinced them to participate. They approached the control node together, moving cautiously through the shadows. The device hummed faintly and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Mark explained their plan. We will not fight the rocks directly. That would be dangerous. Instead, we will adjust the control patterns. I will reprogram the sequence to redirect the rocks away from the camp. But I need you to stay alert. Any mistake could trigger the device and accelerate the rocks. Nara nodded. We will follow your instructions. But do not underestimate the danger. If you fail, the camp will suffer. They began the work carefully. Mark connected small tools to the control node and started reading the sequence. The calculations were complex, but he worked methodically. Nara guided the hunters to secure the perimeter, ensuring no accidental intrusion. Every action was deliberate, precise, and coordinated. The first few attempts were tense. Some of the smaller rocks shifted slightly, but not enough to clear the camp. Mark adjusted the sequences again, recalculating timing and angles. Sweat ran down his face as he worked, but he remained focused. Nara observed him closely, noting his calm and precise movements. She had expected recklessness, but found discipline instead. Hours passed as the sun moved across the sky. Finally, a large cluster of rocks appeared in the distance, moving in dangerous alignment toward the settlement. Mark's adjustments began to take effect. The rocks shifted slightly to the side, missing the center of the camp. The hunters cheered quietly, careful not to attract the attention of any potential enemy watching. Nara approached him. You have done it. The rocks will no longer hit the camp directly, but this is only temporary. The device is still active. Someone may return to finish what they started. Mark looked at her steadily. Then we prepare. We make defenses, teach your people, and watch the skies. They will not catch you unprepared again. Her eyes softened briefly. She did not speak, but the acknowledgement was clear. He had proven himself useful and, more importantly, trustworthy enough to share responsibility for the safety of her people. As night fell, the settlement gathered around fires. The children played quietly, aware of the danger they had narrowly avoided. Elders spoke softly about the human who had risked himself for them. Mark sat near the edge of the fire, repairing a small water filter for the community. Nara remained close, silent but present, her presence both watchful and protective. The older woman approached Mark quietly. You have done more than save our machines today, she said. You have saved lives and given hope. But remember, your place here is temporary. Trust must be earned continuously. Do not forget that, Mark nodded. I understand. I will not forget. I will continue to help in any way I can. Nara watched silently as the human worked. She had warned him to stay away, yet he had chosen the risk. His actions had altered the balance of fear and hope in the camp. She realized that courage was more than strength. It was choice. And Mark had chosen to stand with her people, even when danger threatened him. The night grew quiet, filled only with the sounds of the forest and the faint hum of the device beneath the roots. Mark stayed by the fire, contemplating the coming days. He had faced warnings and dangers, yet he had survived and succeeded. He understood now that the risk was only the first step. The next challenge would be greater, more dangerous, and more uncertain. But he also knew that Nara and her people could trust him, at least for now. As he looked at the stars above, he realized that his presence had already begun to change this world. He had stepped into danger willingly and chosen to act rather than flee. That choice had saved lives, and it would shape the events yet to come. Mark's thoughts drifted briefly to home, to the human worlds he had left behind. But he knew that this settlement, this strange pale forest, had become more important than anything he had known before. The rocks had been redirected, the camp was safe for now, and a fragile alliance had been formed. The rising threat had been met, and the human who had risked himself had proven that courage and intelligence could alter destiny. Nara stood a short distance away, watching the forest edge. She had once said stay away or be hurt, yet now she allowed him to remain. She did not yet trust him completely, but she had seen that his choice to stay was more than courage. It was respect, patience, and skill combined, and that was worth more than any weapon. The night deepened and the stars shone brighter. The settlement rested, the humans' influence quietly strengthening their defenses. Mark's journey was far from over, and the device beneath the roots still hummed faintly, a reminder that threats could return at any moment. But for now, the human had proven that risk when guided by courage and careful. The day began with a cold wind sweeping through the pale forest. Mark woke early, feeling the tension in the air. The device beneath the roots still hummed faintly, a quiet reminder that danger could return at any moment. Nara was already awake, moving through the camp with quiet precision. Her eyes scanned the horizon and the trees, alert for any threat. She did not speak to Mark at first, only observing him from a distance. Mark checked his tools and supplies. Today would be different. The device controlling the rocks could no longer be studied from afar. They had to approach the control node directly, inside the old metal array buried beneath the forest. It was a place no one had entered for years, filled with automated defenses and unknown mechanisms. One wrong move could trigger the array, sending a deadly wave of rocks toward the settlement. Nara approached him at last. Her expression was unreadable. "Today we risk everything," she said. "If you make a mistake, the camp dies. If I make a mistake, the camp dies. Are you ready, human?" Mark nodded. "I am ready. I will follow your instructions and act carefully. We can do this together." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Gather the team. We move at first light." The team assembled near the edge of the settlement. Mark, Nara, and 4 hunters and engineers formed a small group. They were armed with simple weapons for defense, but their real tools were the knowledge and courage each carried. The forest seemed unusually quiet, the pale trees bending slightly as if sensing the danger ahead. Nara led the way, moving silently between the shadows. Mark followed closely, carrying tools and scanning the ground for traps or hidden mechanisms. The others moved behind them, tense and alert. Every step took them closer to the old metal ruins where the array was located, buried in layers of earth and roots. When they reached the entrance, Mark saw the array for the first time. Massive metal panels rose from the ground, covered in strange markings and wires. Small lights flickered along the surface, pulsing with faint energy. The array hummed, low but steady, and the air vibrated slightly around it. "This is it," Nara said. "The heart of the device. One wrong move and it may activate the defenses. Or worse, the rocks will fall. We must be careful." Mark studied the structure. "I can read some of the controls from here. But to fully stop it, I need to reach the control node inside." Nara nodded. "Then we go together. I will protect you as we enter. Follow my lead." Inside the array, the air was cold and metallic. Shadows moved strangely along the walls. Automated defense drones activated as they stepped into the chamber, scanning for intruders. Their eyes glowed faintly and their movements were precise and deadly. The hunters raised their weapons, but Nara stopped them. "Do not fire unless I say," she instructed. "We cannot risk damaging the array before we reach the node." Mark moved carefully, observing the drone's patterns. He began using simple improvisations to confuse them, waving his tools and stepping in calculated ways to redirect their attention. Nara fought beside him, swift and precise, disabling drones that came too close. The team worked together, moving as a single unit, careful not to trigger alarms that might worsen the situation. Each step brought them closer to the control node. The tension in the air was thick. The drones moved with mechanical precision, and Mark had to think quickly. He used his human intuition and engineering knowledge to predict their movements. Nara followed his instructions, coordinating the hunters to block paths and disable dangerous mechanisms. After hours of careful maneuvering, they reached the control node. Mark examined the panels, tracing wires and reading the data. The calculations were complex, but he worked methodically, adjusting the sequences to redirect the rocks away from the camp. Nara stood at the entrance, watching the shadows for any intruders. She knew that anyone discovering them now would be dangerous. Her hand rested lightly on her weapon, ready to act. She observed Mark's precise movements, her respect for him growing with every step. The team followed his instructions carefully, adjusting power flows and monitoring the device. The smaller rocks shifted first, missing the camp entirely. Then the larger rocks began to change course. The team watched in tense silence as their plan worked. Suddenly, a hidden panel opened and a small defense drone activated. It moved quickly toward the control node. Mark acted immediately, using a tool to redirect its path. Nara sprang into action, disabling the drone with a swift strike. The team breathed heavily, relieved but still cautious. Mark continued adjusting the controls. The larger rocks shifted fully, passing safely around the settlement. The array hummed more quietly, its energy stabilizing under his careful guidance. The immediate danger had passed, but they all knew this was only temporary. The device could be reactivated by someone else, and the threat of the enemy returning remained. Outside, the camp watched from a distance as the human and alien team emerged from the ruins. The children clapped quietly while the elders bowed their heads in respect. Mark stepped forward, exhausted but relieved. Nara approached him, her expression a mixture of pride and caution. "You have done what few could," she said. "The rocks will not hit the camp today. But this device is not gone. Someone may return to use it again." Mark nodded. "Then we prepare. We teach your people to monitor the skies and the array. We build defenses. We do not wait for the enemy to act." Nara's eyes softened briefly. "You are different from the others. You risk your life and you do not ask for reward. That is rare." Mark looked at her calmly. "I do not seek reward. I only want to help. That is enough." The rest of the day was spent reinforcing the settlement. Mark helped the hunters and engineers strengthen barriers and secure pathways. Nara coordinated the people, giving instructions with calm authority. Together, they worked efficiently, turning the camp into a safer place. Mark also began teaching simple monitoring techniques. He showed the team how to detect the signals of the array and interpret the patterns. The people listened closely, eager to learn and protect themselves. Nara observed silently, realizing that Mark's knowledge would strengthen their community far beyond a single battle. As night fell, the camp gathered around the fire once more. The children played quietly, and the elders spoke softly about the human who had risked himself for them. Mark sat near the edge, repairing small tools and helping where he could. Nara remained close, her presence protective but calm. "You have proven yourself today," she said finally. "But remember, one wrong choice can undo everything. Do not forget that," Mark nodded. "I will remember. I will act carefully. Always." The night grew quiet, filled only with the sounds of the forest and the faint hum of the array beneath the ruins. Mark understood that the risk they had taken today was only the beginning. The device still existed, and the enemy could return at any time. But for now, the human had proven that courage, careful planning, and teamwork could overcome even the most dangerous threats. Nara looked at him quietly. She had once said, "Stay away from me or be hurt." Yet now she allowed him to remain. She did not yet trust him completely, but she had seen his skill, courage, and respect for her people. And that, she realized, was worth more than any weapon. The stars above shone brightly, reflecting on the pale trees and the calm camp. Mark sat quietly, knowing the days ahead would demand even more courage, wisdom, and heart. But he also knew that together, they could face whatever dangers awaited. And in that quiet night, a new bond formed between human and alien, cautious, fragile, but strong enough to promise that they could protect the settlement together. The morning sun rose over the pale forest, casting long shadows across the settlement. Mark woke early, feeling the cool breeze on his face. The forest was quiet, but there was a sense of purpose in the air. Today the camp would move from survival to preparation. The device that had guided the falling rocks was no longer an immediate threat, but it still existed, and someone might try to use it again. Mark knew that teaching the settlement how to protect itself was the next step. Nara was already awake, standing near the edge of the camp. Her eyes scanned the forest, alert for any danger. Mark approached her carefully. "Good morning," he said. "Are you ready to begin training the scouts?" She turned to him, her face serious. "We must be ready. I will not allow the settlement to be threatened again. Your presence here has been unusual but useful. Today you help us strengthen more than the walls." Mark nodded. "Then let us begin." The team gathered near the largest clearing. Mark demonstrated simple monitoring techniques, teaching the scouts how to observe the skies for unusual activity and detect signals from the array. He explained patterns, timing, and ways to adjust defenses quickly. Nara stood beside him, giving commands in her own language while following Mark's instructions. The children watched closely, eager to understand, and the elders took careful notes. The scouts practiced what Mark taught them, moving through the trees with quiet precision. Nara observed, offering corrections when necessary. She had once feared that a human could only cause harm, yet here was proof that Mark's actions strengthened their people. By midday, the settlement had a small network of watchers and prepared defenders. Mark felt a sense of satisfaction, but he knew this was only the beginning. The threat of the device or the enemy who created it could return at any time. Preparation and vigilance were the true defense. After the exercises, Mark and Nara walked through the camp, inspecting the repairs made after the previous dangers. The children ran past them, laughing and carrying small tools to help. Elders worked quietly, their hands steady as they reinforced barriers and adjusted equipment. Nara spoke softly to Mark. "You have changed things here. The camp is safer and the people are learning again, but do not think the threat is gone. The device remains and our enemies may return." Mark looked at her calmly. "I know, but they will find us ready. We will not be surprised again. We have learned and we have acted." Her eyes softened. "You have risked your life for us, human. Few would do what you have done." Mark shrugged lightly. "I only did what I could. That is all any of us can do." As the sun began to set, the settlement gathered for a quiet feast. It was small and simple, but filled with warmth and gratitude. The children played near the fire, the elders shared stories of past struggles, and the scouts discussed what they had learned. Mark sat near the edge, quietly observing the scene. Nara approached him and handed him a small token, a carved leaf from the pale trees. "This is a sign of trust," she said. "It means that you are no longer an outsider, at least not completely. You have proven your courage and your skill. Your actions matter here." Mark accepted the token with respect. "Thank you. I will honor it." She nodded and stepped back, watching the camp with a protective gaze. Her trust in him was not complete, but it had begun to grow. During the night, a distant hum reached Mark's ears. It was faint, almost unnoticeable, but he recognized it. The device beneath the roots still existed, still active, though harmless for now. Mark knew they had bought time, not permanent safety. He rose quietly and checked the perimeter with Nara's help. Together they made small adjustments to the monitoring system, ensuring that any unusual activity would be detected immediately. The night passed without incident. The camp slept, but the lessons of vigilance had been learned. Mark and Nara stood silently near the fire, watching the stars above. For a long moment, neither spoke. Their bond was unspoken but real. Mutual respect, cautious trust, and shared responsibility. The next morning, Mark prepared to leave the camp temporarily. He had to ensure that the settlement could continue to defend itself even in his absence. Nara approached him at the edge of the forest. "You have done more than I expected," she said. "The people are safer, stronger, and more confident. You have earned a place here, even if you return to your ship." Mark smiled faintly. "I did what I could. The rest will be up to them now. I have taught them to watch, to act, and to trust each other. That is all any teacher can do." Nara handed him a small map of the area, marked with safe paths and important locations. "If you return, follow these routes. You are welcome here. But remember, the future is uncertain. Be cautious." Mark nodded. "I will." "Thank you, Nara." She gave a small, rare smile. "You are human, yet you carry courage unlike any I have seen. Take care of yourself." Mark returned to his ship and prepared for departure. The settlement was quiet, the pale trees swaying gently in the breeze. He looked back one last time and saw Nara standing at the edge of the clearing, her figure strong and watchful. The token she had given him hung in his hand, a reminder of trust, courage, and the bond they had formed. As the ship lifted into the sky, Mark felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had not only survived in this distant forest, but had made a difference. He had chosen to take the risk, to act when others might have hesitated. And that choice had changed the fate of an entire settlement. From above, he could see the people moving through the camp, the children laughing, and the elders inspecting their defenses. Nara's eyes followed him even from the ground. Mark knew that their bond would endure even across the distance. Word of the humans' courage spread quickly. Nearby settlements and trading partners heard of the one who had risked his life for an alien world. Some who had feared humans began to see them differently. Mark's actions had proven that humans could be brave, wise, and compassionate, not just powerful but willing to act for the greater good. Days later, Mark returned briefly to check on the settlement. He found the people stronger and more confident. Scouts moved through the forest with quiet precision, Tools and machines worked efficiently. The device beneath the roots remained, but the people had learned to monitor and manage it. Nara met him at the edge of the camp. "You have done well," she said. "Your presence has given us hope and knowledge. You have shown us that risk, when guided by courage and wisdom, can protect rather than destroy. That is a lesson we will not forget." Mark nodded. "I only hope your people continue to use what they have learned. They are strong enough to face the future, and if danger returns, I will be here to help if needed." Nara's eyes softened. "Then you are not just a visitor. You are a friend." Mark prepared to leave once more, this time for a longer journey. As the ship lifted into the sky, the settlement watched. Nara and the elders stood together, the children waving small hands. The pale forest shimmered in the sunlight, a symbol of survival and hope. Mark reflected on what had happened. He had faced warnings, danger, and the unknown. He had chosen to stay when others might have fled. He had risked himself for people who were strangers at first, and in doing so had formed bonds that could not be broken. Humanity's reputation had grown not through conquest or power, but through courage, intelligence, and compassion. Nara pressed a hand to her chest, holding the carved leaf token close. She looked to the stars, ready to answer the next call for help. She had once warned the human to stay away. Now she knew that some risks were worth taking. Mark's ship disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind a settlement stronger than before, guided by human courage and alien wisdom. The bond formed between them was more than survival. It was alliance, trust, and hope for the future. The pale forest stood quiet yet alive with renewed energy. Children played, elders planned, and Nara watched over her people with vigilance and pride. Mark had left, but his choices would echo through this world for years to come. Humanity had proven itself not only strong, but willing to act for others. And that truth, above all, ensured that the future, no matter what threats came, could be faced with courage. The sun set over the settlement, casting gold across the trees. The human had taken the risk, and in doing so, had changed the fate of an alien world. The stars above shone brighter, carrying a quiet promise. When humans choose courage, wisdom, and compassion, no challenge is impossible.